Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another Fort Friday. I'm your host, Anthony DiNardo. With me, of course, we have the Fort, Michael McKenry. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been way too long. Fort's been hiding away, I guess. Those little like effects on the video was cool. It looked like I was about to get raptured or something. Just disappear.
Let's hope.
Get a homer. Just
let's keep you here.
Oh man, yeah. How you been? Everything good?
I've been good.
We just didn't talk for 40 minutes off air.
I know, right?
Yeah, it is what it is.
We basically already recorded a podcast without hitting the record button. But but yeah, I mean it's good. Baseball season came. It went by way too quick, as I feel like it always does.
It did. It's because every 4 to 6 days we get to see the superhuman pitch.
Right, I guess so.
Always have
Paul Skeens, man. But yeah, like it's off-season mode now. Watching other teams participate in playing baseball. Yeah, just kind of chilling. The weather's getting a little cooler here. I guess it's fall now. I hate it.
I love the fall.
Man, you would.
Dude, leaves change. I'm obviously a catcher and I'm a sweater, so having that cool, air, it's nice. It's nice. You should just get out and walk in nature and just, feel better about yourself because it's a beautiful thing. Man. Yeah.
Sure. It's funny. I mean, I grew up obviously in Pennsylvania. I live here in Jacksonville, Florida. And everyone talks about what's that?
Super cold there.
Right. Well, relatively cold.
In Florida.
It was 73 degrees yesterday. I went outside at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's called a great day.
That's ridiculous.
Then put on a jacket. Yeah, pansy.
I don't want to. But no, like everyone comes to me like, I mean, come on, it's the great time of year. All the leaves change colors and that. I'm like, I've seen it long enough. I don't care. Give me the palm trees, give me the sun. But at any rate, yeah, it's like baseball season's now over. It's hitting the off season now. Looking to free agency and thinking forward to 2025 already is for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So that's where my mind's at.
Tell me more. What do you mean? Like maybe a little recap of the season and your thoughts. There's been a lot of things going on. I got away for about a week and change, and it was nice just to not worry about it, not look at social media, not see what's going on. And then I caught up, a lot this last couple of days, and yeah, it was a wild year, dude. It was a wild year.
It was disappointing, but I mean, even bad years, there's still things that you can look at too and like, well, that was fun, that was exciting. There's still moments, there's definitely more moments this year.
This one hit different. Like I could see it in the fan base. They're frustrated, honestly pissed. And I'm not going to say that they're not going to show up again next year because they always show up. They're the best fans on the planet. But I think you have to look at next season and say, like, what's it going to take? Mm-hmm. What's it going to take to get everyone on board and moving forward in the same direction? I mean, we are Pirates, and if we're going to lift our sails, we want the wind blowing us in a direction that is going towards where we want to go. And I feel like that's
you love making actual Pirates references. I swear every show you at least make two.
Oh, it's so true because I think that's one of our issues is that we need to double down on that. It's the thing that we should be great at. Without a great team on the field, we should be great at being a Pirate. If you look at our history and, moving here and getting to know Kinger and Greg Brown and Steve Blass and hearing all the stories, like we should be not just doubling down, we should be constantly digging in. I mean, having Barry Bonds in Pittsburgh and getting inducted, like that's cool. That guy should be around way more. Like right. We should have the greatness around because that reminds people of what it is, what it can be, and what it will be. And I don't think we do that enough. And I think also we need to bring the new age to it. Like real mean, ridiculous, like Tampa Bay Pirates. They have a ship. I want a ship. We've talked about that before, but like, I do think like creating that identity and understanding that, the Steelers have the renegade with defense. Everybody knows the Steelers can play defense. But what does Pittsburgh do? Oh, they suck at offense. And then everything kind of tumbles on top. But I saw the other day that they're thinking about hiring John Gruden, who in almost every single way is like, should we? Everybody's kind of like stand off because of something he did that, I believe forgiveness. but he probably is one of the best offensive minds in football. So if you bring him in, you're saying, okay, if he can't figure it out, then what's the problem? And that's what you do. You have to go outside the box. You have to allow people to come back in and hopefully, show that they've changed, they've gotten better or whatever, because we're all humans. Marcelo Ozuna, if they just threw him to the curb and didn't understand that full story, which I've gotten to hear, like, you only know a little bit. There's a lot more to it. And the fact they gave him grace, he was one of the best players in the National League this year. And I'm not saying everybody gets that chance that fast, but that's what the Pirates got to do. They just got to look at it and say, some of the goons that we've had in a Pirates uniform, the league didn't like, and they've been pushed away. Let's get those goons back and show that, hey, we're going to go after it.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, every matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games, with the largest catalog and odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Well, I did think about you recently, honestly, because the Ferris wheel in Pittsburgh right now, I'm sure you're aware of that, right? That's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I talked about that on the point, if that's something you want to see in Bucktober. And one of the responders, it was, I think, Bucko Banner, their show, responded back, and he said that, no, he doesn't want to see that. You know what he wants to see for it? A pirate ship.
And
I was like, honestly, instantly, I was like, oh, I remember you talking about that. But yeah, for sure. Like you talked about doubling down on that. It's funny, though, you mentioned about offense. The team's identity for the Steelers. It's defense, no offense. And, man, is that not the same for the Pirates? Would you know if I told you this since PNC Park opened? The Pirates have had only one season of 100 weighted runs created plus or better, and that's in 2014. There are 108 weighted runs created plus as a team. Every other year, even in 13, even in 15, they were a below average hitting team. That's just kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's why, I don't think that's our solution. I don't think going out and buying bats is our solution. It's never worked. I don't think it ever will.
Yeah.
I mean,
Marlon, at least getting league average would be nice. Not 27th. At least getting near league average would be nice, not 27th.
Yeah, and I think you find that in different ways. I think we could have ran more. I think consistency in the lineup would have really helped. I think betting on players would have really, really helped. I mean, think about Jack Sawinski's non-26 homers in the lineup hurts, Henry Davis doing just a little bit what he did in AAA. Like, you can look at all of it and say it's there. Why is it not showing up on the field? And you can kind of look at it and say, like, do these guys know where they fit? Do they know their role? Do they know what it's going to take to stay in the lineup? Do they know if they're playing the next day? There's just a lot of questions that I think the fans and those guys, as being a former player that was always on the threshold of possibly getting that starting role and then getting it pulled back, and then finally just saying, hey, I got to accept I'm going to be the best backup I can be, period. And when I did that, when I became a free agent, after I got hurt the second time, the Giants called me and offered me a guaranteed contract because of Buster Posey. And I'll never forget that, because he said he's an unselfish player and he wants to win, and I want him here.
Nice.
That taught me something, that if you understand sooner where you fit at the time, this is where I'm going to go, this is who I am, and then look to continue to advance, eventually the team has to say, yes, we are going to bet on that guy. He's a backup now, but we believe he's more. We're going to help him in every way we can, give him every tool to his disposal, just like they did with Mitch Keller, and see what happens. They may be wrong, but if they bet on a good human being and they bet on a Pirate, are they really wrong? No, they're not, because the city will embrace them and understand that, hey, there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs, but the reality of it is, like, you're betting on the right people. And that's why those teams won in 13, 14, 15.
Well, let's kind of start there, because, you talk about frustration, and a peek behind the curtains before I changed it to get creative. I actually had this show titled as Frustrations. So maybe I should have kept it there. But I think I'm with you. I mean, this year was frustrating, and because I think there was higher expectations. Now, myself felt they didn't do enough this offseason to really maximize what those expectations should have been. But regardless, the expectations were better. Like you mentioned, the best pitcher maybe on the planet right now today is on your baseball team. You drafted him last year. It's Paul Skeens. You saw what he did his rookie season. Just outstanding stuff. Most of it never seen before. You've already were a 76 team last year. And yes, you had some injuries with Endy, Oviedo, right? But you're able to find some things. Joey Bart coming in. That's a plus. That's a win. You found something there. So to find yourself being in a position where you have Paul Skeens, you get O'Neal Cruz back.
But real quick, go back to, I'm probably going to go in some areas that are very gray. Go back to Joey Bart. Is Joey Bart a win or a product of a circumstance?
Well, I think both, but regardless of how the win was created, it was a win. It was a guy you didn't have. You picked him up off, being DFA'd.
But what I'm saying is, if you're playing blackjack, right, you just busted because you have two guys that are out, one guy that's in. You see what I'm saying? Like, I agree. It's a win on the field because of the circumstance. But the circumstance that is there hasn't ever been addressed. And that's the toughest thing, I think, for fans, is not having those things addressed. Like, what is the plan for Indy? Why did he not play the last week? Why did he get taken out of the game? Is he okay? Why was he catching so soon? Why is he taking raw balls at first base? Like, what is the thought? Are they going to try to go back to 2022 where he was better than Buster Posey and Bryce Harper across 4 levels because he was a utility guy? Or are they going to put him back behind the plate as a backup, being out for a year behind Joey Bart? Make that make sense. Joey Bart's never put up those numbers in the minor leagues, and Joey Bart can't do what Indy can do at the plate by natural talent. So you have a lot of question marks, and then you have the guy that was 1-1 in Henry Davis. And that's what's tough, is because, like, why is it not translating?
Well, that's part of the frustrations.
Yeah, but
like you're saying, like that's
but I'm asking you, like, what is the thought of it? Why is it not frustrating? Or, like, why is it not translating? I know why it's frustrating, but, like, it's not that big of a shift. I don't care what anybody says, outside of everybody making excuses for the positioning, which is true, and ball strikes, which is funny to say, because the challenge system in the minor leagues, the actual discipline hitters are really doing a lot better, like Bay and Henry Davis, but it still doesn't make any sense why he's swinging through balls in the zone.
Yeah.
At a rate that's off the charts in the big leagues, and the same fastballs with the same exact analytics.
But again, like, as far as fans go, like, but is that not frustrating? Like, that's part of the problem. Like, you were supposed to be better, and part of being better is, again, like, you've got O'Neal Cruz coming back, which had a fine year. Paul Skeens is here. You would think the natural progression of the young guys, Jack Sawinski came off of almost a 3-WAR season, and yes, it was very up and down. It was weird, but the talent's there, the power's there. You don't expect him going from like a 2.6 WAR or something like that to a negative 1.1 in the same year.
Just him and Hayes having their same years, and put Triolo in there, we're a playoff team. Like, not getting better at all. But that's what I'm trying to say. That doesn't make sense. And
it doesn't. And it seems to happen to virtually
different questions.
Everyone.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, like, so why? Why is this happening? And the next question here in thought process is, the Pirates have seemed to want to answer it. We're fine. Ben Cherington's likes Derek Shelton. He vouched for him. He says he's going to be the manager for next year. The problem is the hitting coach, Andy Haynes, the strength and conditioning coach, and the bullpen coach. And we're solved now, guys. 2025 is going to be okay.
Yeah, which here's 3 things that are really hard to do. The bullpen coach almost always wants to be a pitching coach. A hitting coach, it usually takes a year to establish an understanding with guys. So whoever they hire, the longer they wait, the harder it's going to be because they have 40 guys they have to get to know. And then the strength coach is going to come in with a new thought, theory, and whatever. But all their assistants are still there. So it's tough for me because I don't know if the players were involved with that decision. I don't know if there was a review process or an exit meeting with those guys. So they can kind of say, like, you know, their piece, because I think that's always more important. You know, why did you stay? Why are you going? Type thing. I think there's a question of, like, why is nobody left? People get poached all the time. Nobody's left our staff. You know, like there's questions that I think should be asked more. You know, are the contracts that good? You know, like, what is it? Who's better than Andy Haynes? What about the other guys in the cages, you know, that want Andy Haynes' job? You know, like, and I'm an Andy Haynes fan. He's going to be a bench coach. He's going to win somewhere. There's no doubt in my mind. But it's those questions I don't think are asked enough, because, like, we've been tearing Band-Aids off for years. They're not healing well. We're getting infections. We got scars. And it's like, well, what's the difference? It's the players. Like, what do they need? Why has no one talked to Jack Sawinski in an open forum and say, bro, you good? What's going on? What happened? It's, for me, like, that's the job, you know? Same thing with Henry Davis. Like, I think that's important. And I think it's good for the fans, but it's not happening. And that, I think that's on the players more than the organization, because it's their brand. You know, like, why did Joey Bart not work in San Francisco? You know what I mean? He had every opportunity.
I do.
Him and Bailey are literally the perfect pair. So why didn't it work? Nobody asked that question. And it's those things that I'm like, well, yeah, we solved the offensive problem, but if we have the best pitching rotation in baseball, don't we want the best defensive catching? Like, don't you want Paul Skeens to have a below 1 ERA if he can get 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 runs by receiving, throwing, and blocking? We had 0 all across the board except Grandal.
Mm-hmm.
We had negatives. Everyone had negatives except Grandal. Blocking plus, receiving plus. Not even Joey Bart's throwing got to a positive. So it's like that balance. And I think he's a great player. I think he's going to be good for us, but maybe not as an everyday catcher. Maybe he plays the first. I don't know. But those are the questions that I feel like it's all in-house. It's so wrapped tight that we want to go out and do the same thing because we don't know, like, what's going on. Where is it going to go? Like, for me, I would love to see them double down on defense, double down on athletic ability, and double down on pitching. I could care less about offense. Because
so I'll say this.
It's there.
I don't necessarily care less about offense, but what you say here is kind of why I have the show titled what it is, because
get creative. Yeah, I love it.
What I think the Pirates are absolutely lacking in is just creativity, you know, and not to make like a Moneyball reference and say that's the way, but
explain that a little bit.
The Pirates seem to be trying to do what other teams are doing, what they can't accomplish with. I mean, they can't spend money and not doing that, and they can't develop, you know, like I don't understand like what their brand is. Almost like we talk about, like, as a team identity, like what it, not less even the team's identity, but like, what are you as a front office? Like, what is your identity? And to go back to what you said, like when Sherrington first came in, it seemed like what we're doing as far as like trading and acquiring talent is we're going to get a lot of high variable type of players, very high ceiling, but they could also bust, right? But that's how you get potential superstars, instead of like the low floor, low ceiling type of guy. But you also, I felt like,
what about the high?
Like you value defense at first, didn't he?
What about the high floor guys? Like, we don't talk enough about the high floor guys. You know, like that's what we need. Like, predictability is what Brian Reynolds
at
3
this
times
point
over is what we need.
At this point, I feel like yes. Early on, I like that approach because that's how the Pirates are going to get a superstar. Like, you're not going to get likely, well, a Paul Skeens that comes to the draft. But like, you're not going to really probably acquire a Paul Skeens in a trade unless he's an 18-year-old high variable. Right? You're not, the Pirates aren't going to get a 22-year-old Paul Skeens in a trade, if that makes sense. Like, as a prospect, you know what I mean? They're going to have to trade someone and develop them and turn them into a Paul Skeens is like what I was alluding to.
And I'm gonna debunk the word develop them. No one's getting developed outside that person. Like, Paul Skeens develops himself. That's
with
where
that
all
said,
this
you still have
go.
to have tutelage there, right? I mean, someone's got to have the knowledge and help you get to that, right?
Right. But when the guy in the room is smarter than you, which Paul is in most places,
Well,
he had his own plan. But that should be the want for every single guy. If you have that product right in front of your face and he's as good as he is, yes, he's got remarkable stuff, but he didn't have remarkable stuff 4 years ago. He's worked his way into this and he has a mentality. I want to, like Ohtani, he has a list of what he wants to accomplish. He's not scared of the spotlight. He's not scared to ask for what he needs. That's what should be driving us forward, is every individual leading themselves and capturing the guys around him and pushing them forward. That's why AJ Burnett succeeded here. It had nothing to do with anybody but AJ Burnett getting freedom to be AJ Burnett and then push on to other guys because that's what he needed. That justified his being and his confidence. It wasn't just performance based like in New York. He knew he was making an impact every day he showed up.
I'm going to take this two ways with what you said, because I think that's part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm alluding to his identity, first off, is with like the Sherrington era, it seemed as if he was valuing defense. Like, what we are going to do is we're going to have defense up the middle. And that seemed to kind of escape this team. Like, the defense is pretty bad. But the AJ Burnett
Why get rid of Kevin Newman?
Well, you also had O'Neal Cruz coming up. I was okay with getting rid of Kevin Newman.
But Kevin Newman has been on multiple playoff teams now because he's an upgrade to Alika Williams and doesn't need the at-bats. He's proven it year after year after year.
Yeah.
He's short-handed. Like he's literally Jordy Mercer on defense.
Yes.
He's gonna be right here. He's not elite, but he's right here. So he's the guy that you can put in. He's gonna hit 260. He's gonna hit 8 homers, but he's gonna be predictable. And that's what I'm trying to say, is the predictability of Kevin Newman at $2.5 million is way more important than having 7 other shortstops rotate in and out and nobody really know where they stand, because their defense all went down this year because they're all doing things they've never done or what they didn't think they were going to do. Like Triolo started out the year at second base. He did not see that coming.
Really?
How would he? He had a 2.5 WAR. He was our second best WAR player, third best WAR player last year as a utility guy. This is the same thing that happened with J.A. a long time ago. He's one of the best players in baseball as a utility guy, and you move him. IKF's one of the best utility guys in baseball. We moved him.
Well, yeah.
It's because everybody's got a better way to do it. They're smarter than the actual game. But if you listen to the interviews, the guys tell you exactly what they feel. Like IKF said, I'm at my best when I'm moving around the diamond, knowing I'm helping my team in a different way every day. And that helps his swing. Because I was that guy. I knew I was better if I was running the meetings and I was focused on catching bullpens. I hit better. And when I got to the big league, somehow I became a hit first guy instead of defensive first guy. And that's
is that also like a confidence thing, like comfort and confidence?
It takes time. It takes time, and it takes a look in the mirror. Hurdle used to say you have to be a really good self-evaluator, but how can you be a self-evaluator when you're looking at it with all the numbers and saying, well, I'm not supposed to succeed? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's the toughest part. So it's one of those things where it's like, where do you find that balance?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part. And that's why like coaching shifts and everything aren't always the answer, because you have to bring that relationship back and you have to figure that out. And, I know everybody over there, they're all trying to do what they think is right. But to your point, get creative, and the accountability side of like, what can we do better? How can we be different? What we're doing isn't the best solution. Fans are pissed. Let's not treat them like children. Let's walk through this. Let's be loud. Let's do something a little bit that's, outside the box, because you were talking about that a minute ago. Like, look what LA did. You know what I mean? It pissed off the league, but look what LA did.
Yeah. Now they have the ability to do that, but Pirates can do other things and get creative in their ways. Doesn't have to just be finances.
But we don't have to fight the 11% tax on every player that plays there. In that division too, they play in California 3 times in that division. So the money there, like $150 million here is probably 210 there. You know, so it's a huge hit to every player that goes there. And I don't know if that's thought of or talked about, but like that's why Texas can take on, you know, those big contracts, like in a different way. Like you can go there, like DeGrom could have gotten more somewhere else, but he's paying no taxes.
Yep.
So it's just a different way.
Ironically, same with Florida, but Tampa and Miami doesn't want to pay anyone either. So
yeah, I love what Tampa, like I love their model. And I thought it was something Ben was gonna do early on. And I don't
know what, like, I don't know what their model is. I don't know what their identity is. But going back, I said I want to circle back around this. You talk about AJ, and that again, like that's also part of the issue. I think, like, so I was talking about developing and such, right? But I think the biggest thing too is I talk about leadership a lot, and I feel like this is what this organization and maybe clubhouse, and again, outside perspective, but I feel like that's what this organization lacks is like true leaders. And you talk about AJ, right? The ability to know, like, to put AJ in the best is to let him be. You know what I mean? I guess that's what I'm alluding to. Like, that allowed AJ, like you're saying, like AJ, it was him that did it, right? It wasn't Hurdle, wasn't whomever. But I think it's also the understanding from Hurdle say, let AJ be AJ, and that's how we're going to get the most out of him, opposed to, no, you're in my system, you're going to fit this mold, you're going to do what I tell you, right? It's knowing, it's, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, it's knowing and understanding people's behaviors and mentality, and knowing how to lead people, and right, like their strengths and weaknesses and such. And so I guess that's kind of what I'm alluding to here in this drawn out way.
I'm gonna try to articulate this the best I can. There's a lot of misconception on the leaders in that clubhouse.
Okay.
AJ was definitely a leader, but like you said, he was set up perfectly coming here. It was like the perfect situation, perfect storm. I can't imagine that played into the trade. I think it was a complete luck of the draw, and they nailed it. And that happens. But either way, you're upgrading your team. Rod Barajas was a leader. Barmas was a leader. Hedges was a leader. Grandal, once he became the backup, was a leader. Like Kutch needs he doesn't need to be Batman. AJ wanted that attention.
Right.
So AJ's taking that attention so everyone else could lead the way they needed to.
And I guess
he knew the right guys to go to say, hey, go check in on so-and-so. He knew when to push back with the coaching staff and in a way that he should. But it was always on the offensive side, not the defensive, or not the pitching side. He was close with Ray and Yuki. And that's what I think is, like, you knew that unit was tight pitching wise. And they were fighting against, hey, score some more runs. And it became like, all right, we're going to do this together. And then a relationship formed in a weird way. And that's balance of personalities. That's what great leaders do. Like, I think Clint Hurdle was a great leader of men. I think if he was a president of baseball operations and just set people up in the right spots, I think it'd be great. I think it's just being able to do that and say, how can I maximize this person with their personality, with their history, with their traumas, with their play to be the best version of themselves. Right. The best way to do that is go ask them. And once you've asked them,
that's where I was going more of, is not leaders of like Kutch and Burnett, but leaders of like Hurdle, right? Like the coaching to get the players in the best situation. Because again, like I used AJ to kind of go back to your point of
it's a great, but he was a product of, I think, a great circumstance, and him taking on the Batman role and everything else. It took some light off of a guy like Barmas, who Helton looked to in Colorado to keep him accountable. So he already, in Tulo and all these dudes. So like he already had that knack, but behind the scenes, most of the time, the dude that's leading on a team is a Donnie Kelly or a Michael McKenry, because they're pushing forward guys that have to be great. They're sitting in the cage with Pedro Alvarez, going through deep things. Those are the guys you got to surround people with. Like I will say it till I'm blue in the face. The one guy I wish we would have signed was Santana. I wish we would, because O'Neal Cruz started out slow because I really believe because of Santana. And now I'm seeing that relationship and bond with him and Reynolds and him and Kutch. And that's what you have to see to win. And then when players start pushing back like they did in Cincinnati, that's when things change. No one pushed back. So like everybody thinks everything's like okay. When India pushed back this year, I was like, something's going to change. But their biggest mistake, and I said this to you on the podcast, was not signing Votto. Let him go out in a chariots on fire, blazing saddle. The fact he had to go to the Blue Jays was like awful. Awful. You know what I mean? Sign him.
Really didn't even get to.
No. I mean, where did he go as soon as he retired? But let him figure that out there. Like, that's what baseball is missing. The human aspect is dying, and I think it's the game changer. I'm very passionate about all this right now, and I've been locked away, so I haven't been able to talk about it.
I know, and it's funny. We didn't talk about this. I want to go somewhere with this now because you talk about the human element. This is where I think managing is the biggest factor. So let's kind of spin this and that's also, again, like where I'm kind of leading here about like the hurdle and the leaders and understanding people and building these relationships and talking to the player and saying, hey, what's best for you, opposed to giving you what I think's best for you. Right. So this has been a hot debate, somewhat hot. Maybe I'm making that a little bit bigger than what it is, but Terry Francona
maybe we should pull the boys on and just do a debate. Go grab a brewski and just get after it for a little while.
Let's do it.
In a while.
But I feel okay. So Terry Francona gets hired by the Reds, and this in itself kind of brought up the debate again. How much does a manager even matter? Now, I can understand to the point like the players play, right? And kind of like to your point here, the players have developed themselves. Like a lot of stuff is on the players, but I put a lot on coaching and managing as well. And I think the thing with me is most managers aren't great X and O guys, right? Between the lines, there's not many that are just like, oh my God, this guy is just a great manager. He always pulls the right strings. But I think what goes into a really good manager is behind this stuff, like the communication you're talking about, making the best out of all the players. So, you've been in the clubhouse, obviously, I kind of want to like your perspective on this. How much does a manager actually matter to a team in a clubhouse? And is there a way to quantify it in like wins and losses?
The actual title, disregard that. Leader of men and helping guys find their potential, I think is a gift. Like Mike Schultz, great leader of men. No doubt I knew he was going to go and do his thing. Stephen Vogt, just from what I know of him, we had the same agent, pretty predictable. Craig Counsell, super understanding. Like Milwaukee's, the way that they did everything there. Pat Murphy, I mean, talk about a guy that humbled himself, and he had an associate manager, which I think that's where baseball is going and where it should be, because a bench coach should not be the field coordinator. So yeah, I think leading men and understanding the human element is a gift, and it takes a lot of effort, but I think that's the manager's job. I think that's what Jimmy Leland was impeccable at, is seeing, John Wayner the same way he saw Barry Bonds. When you can do that, there's nobody that won't go to war with you. Like there's a book I love. It's called The Traveler's Gift. And this guy changed his life by visiting 7 influential people in a wild time. One of them was Chamberlain, and he was a school teacher in the Civil War, and they were about to lose their line. And this is a true story. And they were running out of bullets, or pulling bullets out of bodies, and the South was about to come up the hill. And if they lose the line, they were going to lose the war. This is 100% true. When they started coming up, he jumped up on their protective barrier and said, "Charge, charge, charge." and the South turned around and started running away. And they captured who was there, but they literally, the North won because of that moment and the courage of that dude putting himself out there and taking a risk because he knew there was no other way. But he was in the front. So what everybody else do, they just did the same thing. But that took a lot of time to get to that point. That's why when everybody makes fun of the Hoke Hay stuff, that wasn't a bad thought. It was just bad execution. Because every individual in pro ball is playing for their career as a part of a team. The hardest part is how do you take a bunch of dudes getting paid a bunch of money that feel expendable to play together, because it's not necessarily always beneficial to them. And they have an agent, they have a wife, they have a family, they have other players that are telling them it's greener over here. How do you make sure they see that it is black and gold and that's it? That's the gift.
There's the magic. And that's kind of what I'm alluding to a lot of this too, and like my talk. But again, like we're in a new age baseball, right? There's the difference of like the old mind, the new mind, and you can't really quantify that stuff. And it doesn't help that Jim Leland himself has said, hey, I didn't matter. The players play. I look at that more like, that's Jim Leland being humble, because Jim Leland was a master of that.
It is. And that's everybody's got a personality, and it's based on, where they came from and whatnot. And they choose to do it a different way. Once you get past the nitty gritty, like you can kind of see who people are.
Right.
And he stood up for the one thing that he wanted to do, and that was lead men, help coach them in baseball and life. And he created a very high standard that not even Barry Bonds or Bobby Bonilla or Andy Van Slyke could, get away with overstepping and doing things they shouldn't. And that's the difference maker. That's what you have to do. So I think it's really important. But here's a quote. I tweeted it out. I think players like being coached. I think they enjoy working hard, but you have got to be organized, and we will be. We'll get after it. What I think is enjoyable is playing the game right, and to be honest, trying to kick some ass. Terry Francona. So he created an identity right there. You're going to be coached. You're going to work hard, which everybody there, we're going to be organized, right? And we're going to get after it. It's like one guy I'm keeping my eye on. I love studying successful people, especially people that maybe have a similar path but a different place. Like JJ Redick is a guy I'm watching incredibly close. I'm following everything he's doing right now because I think he's going to kill it. Because he's not sharing the gift I know he's good at. And that's the human being. He went to Braun and did that podcast to see if this is what he wanted to do. That was for him. That was the most selfish thing he'd ever done that I can find in his personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the key. That's when you say, okay, I'm going to take a risk on someone young to be the manager or to be this, but you have to let him be.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from Zach Wilson in that aspect. Is like double down, have a reason, and coach the guy up. Like let him make mistakes and coach him up. And then if they make the same mistake, like, why'd you do that? What was your thought? Like let them reason through it. It's not just wrong. It could have been right, just executed very poorly. If that's good enough for the greatest in the world, in the Navy SEALs and the Green Berets, that's how they operate. It should be good enough for baseball. And that kind of wraps all that in. I think that was the idea back in the day, but it has to be at an individual level before it can be at a team level. Because what's the incentive in baseball right now to be a good teammate? If you're great, if Paul Skeens was an asshole, nobody would care because he's great. Because Verlander's been an asshole for a long time. There's a lot of dudes that are like that.
Right.
But those guys can change a clubhouse. But if you have one surrounded by a many, you could actually bring that guy up.
No, very true. Very true. And again, just from like an outside perspective, I think that's what's a big chunk that's missing. But again, so let's move forward. Let's talk about
I'm
this.
going to tell you one more story that I think will give you a really good look at this. So I got my USA baseball hat on. That's what reminded me. Did the 18U, it's like the last stage before they pick the team to go do the qualifier to make sure that they're in the Pan Am Games next year. Rick Eckstein, his brother David, were two of the coaches. They couldn't be. Me and David are more like this. Me and Rick have so much in common, but we would probably butt heads in a good way. I learned so much because they built a team around the way Rick was going to manage. But there was some political things that had to take place, movements, and I fought for one guy. Technically, I fought for two, and one I won and one I didn't. But his reasoning made sense, and he was right. And it's because he needed what he needed. It wasn't the best for what they had, but he needed what he needed. And I'll never forget that because he came up to me and was like, thank you for pushing back. Blah, blah. You see things in a way I don't understand. It's like, yeah, I see patterns.
Yeah.
And he was like, I see angles. And we went through this whole spiel. This is the first guy when it comes to like movement and stuff that I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, we need to talk a lot more. It was 3 hours. We were up till 2:45 in the morning, had to be up at 5.
Not with you.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I'm so passionate about development and developing potential. That's why, like, I probably going to coach at some point, but meeting guys at Rick who had to fight all the way to the top and be the smartest man in most rooms just to get fired, but to be a consultant for 3 teams or whatever it is. And people are calling him, and those are good teams. And there's multiple guys out there that people don't know about anymore. And those type of guys are leaving the game. And those are the guys we should be learning from because they've had to learn it in a different way. Guys like Rick Eckstein was a great college player and had to fight. He dropped off the planet from Georgia and went on to, help Barry Bonds, to help Albert Pujols. And like, this is all documented. Help Mike Trout. And he's not in the game. You should be asking why. I pay that guy $1 million to be my hitting coach. But I wouldn't have him in the cage.
An opening.
Well, yeah, but like, it's not good enough. And he finally realizes that, and he pushed back at me because of that. And that's what I love, is when guys like him in great baseball minds do that, they usually get fired. And then all of a sudden they kind of rework and understand the next level where they could go. And then that's when you see the Jimmy Lelands. That's when you see the greatness come together because they get to be who they were maybe meant to be, but they had to figure out a way to do it in the times we're in. I think players are the same way. So wrapping all that in a bow is like, you need to have a lot of people around you that'll push back because they care enough about the player, which that was me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to piss this dude off. I'm never going to be back here. And I just kept going. And then the GM of USA Baseball patted me on the back. Was like, you're right. Don't ever stop. It's like,
nice.
You and Jack are the same way with this stuff. And I was like, good, because me and Jack push back on each other. But Jack and Rick Eckstein are leaders of men.
So not just yes men.
No, they don't. They also want to debate. They want to have deep conversations. They want to challenge the narrative.
Love it. Well, I want to challenge this front office in this 2025 roster because let's kind of get into it because it is the offseason now. I know nothing can really happen until after the World Series, and we'll go down that path. But coming off of this year where we talk about frustration, right? This was frustration. We didn't see really like that next step taken already. So I think there's a lot of people that are worried, like myself. What's 2025 going to bring? I think like the natural progression, you would just think that 2025 you can circle. That's the year the Pirates are going to be in the playoffs. But I think there's a lot of questions. How are they going to be in playoffs? Who's going to let them, get there? We saw who was good. There is Paul Skeens. Like, yes, the pitching is definitely the strength, right? But I guess my fear is, we talked about this a little bit. Payroll's always the topic when it comes to the Pirates, right? What payroll can be, where they're going to go out there and spend. So like the limitations are going to have Ben Cherington to spend on free agency, but I think that also too, like, the past 2 years, you've seen him spend like over $30 million. Maybe
Well,
not
let's
this past year.
Let's take money out of it for the minute.
Sure.
Because like that's a different equation. So let's take the money out of it and just say like, what would it take? What levels us up? You're talking about the offense, right? The weight we've created with runs. You got to look at that first and work back from there. So like, where can we shore up things? And this, I kind of sound like Ben Cherington saying this stuff, but like, that's where you always got to think about it, but then go one step further and be like, well, what the heck happened? And why would it be better? And then our job is to figure out, like, are they doing that, or are they doing something different, or is it the same old, just hoping it's going to be good? And where's the balance of certainty to risk? Like I think if it's run like a business, like you have to think about those things, right?
Right.
And I mean, you can always take out a loan. There's great incentives in the government right now. You take out a loan. Right?
Yeah.
I think the creativity thing's a really good title, man. Like, but I think you have to look at, like, I'll start, right? Let's go back to spring training. Okay. Our third baseman's Brian Hayes. What happened? You know what I mean? And
right.
Like, that has to be answered, but it's quiet. He didn't have surgery, but he didn't play the last 7 weeks. What's wrong with his back? I'm answering. I don't. Some of the things I may know, some of them may not know, but like those are the questions that I don't think the media is asking. I don't think the fans know. So like, Brian had a bad year. Was it because of the back? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. If it was, why is he not yelling to the rooftops? I'm broke. I'm going to get it fixed. Because no one's leading him to do that. And because you can't just say, oh yeah, it's going to be the same. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. You know what I mean? So like,
but I think that you bring up a good point with Brian, and this kind of leads to a lot of things.
Like, and what is Brian? That's my next question. Is like going down this line. Me and Brault did this. Is like, if you're creating a championship team, identify the floor. He's got a high floor.
Yes.
Even hurt this year, he was going to be probably a 1.5 WAR, roughly. Mm-hmm. Even with the like detriment to his offense. So, is he trying to be something offensively that he shouldn't? Because if he's average, he's a 3 WAR player. That's a big difference than having between him and Triolo together barely a 2. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way the Pirates have to look at things. It's like, where can we squeeze this orange, but know that we're going to get juice no matter what? Because that unpredictable thing doesn't work. The one thing we could double down on every year was our bullpen when I was a Pirate.
Yep, for sure.
And that should never change. That should be an identity always.
And really, it kind of was.
Yeah, it
absolutely was.
It was until it wasn't.
But when it was when everything just had to go, and that's kind of understandable. And it almost seemed as if they were building it back up, but it didn't transpire this year at all. I mean, it almost seemed like the bullpen was going to be an identity this year.
Yeah, but what's the fix? If that makes sense.
Well, what the fix is at this point.
Like you said identity, so I'm gonna ask you some questions. What's the bullpen's identity? Enough said. What's Cleveland's identity?
Oh man,
best bullpen in baseball. What's their identity?
Yes, for sure.
I'm throwing today, and I'm punching tickets because they had 6 guys in the top 10 in appearances.
Yeah, it's also, to the point, it's also easier to have that identity when you have a really good staff.
How do you do that? You're getting there. Right. How do you do that?
Develop them? I don't know. What are you getting at, Fort? What are you getting at?
It starts with identity.
Okay.
So, like, if you look at our bullpen, what do we have out there, right? We kind of went off Key Bryan, but like we have some nasty stuff. Are they throwing the right pitches?
There's plenty of right.
Yeah. But also, like, I have a deep belief in that, like, if you want a great bullpen, find the guys that punch tickets. And we don't promote guys. Tampa Bay, when I was there, promoted guys really fast that had swing and miss stuff. Even if they didn't throw strikes, even if they, maybe weren't polished. And I tell you what, 4 of them on the team I was with, the national championship team, all became closers in the big leagues. And they were terrifying to catch. One of them being the Phillies closer, the lefty. I mean, he came from high A to triple A and then was in the big leagues the next year. And I think you look at it and say, well, this guy's a freak. No matter what, it's going to be hard to hit. So, when you throw him out there, it's hard to hit.
Right.
And then you develop that, hey, that's who they are. Or if you have a starter, like some of these guys are going to be starters, but they have that mentality, you put them in the bullpen, you take the best arms, period. And guys with the mentality. And you have to have that balance. We had a lot of guys with the business mentality. I didn't see the FU Bednar. When Chapman gets mad, you saw what happens. I want psychopaths. I want Nicholas, who punched himself in the head after punching some guys out this year. I don't think their next hire, like I really like Justin Message. I thought he was a really smart baseball guy. But go get a psychopath to bring in there. Like that's what I'm saying about creating identity. Like either go get, I always think a catcher is a great bullpen coach. But like go get either a catcher or a dude that used to hit himself in the head with Red Bulls. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's the difference, because when the guy comes in from the bullpen and the lights start flickering and the music comes on, that hits. When you're in LA, you look over and look at the rookies, those eyes are this big and they're like, Kopech? Shoot. But when he came out with the White Sox, he's like, oh, heaters, baby. I mean, really, it's that big of a difference when you create the surroundings, the Shark Tank.
Yeah, no, like that makes sense. And it's like, I see that in this bullpen. Now, obviously the thing is David Bednar just was not David Bednar this year. And that's a big problem, right? But like this team does have some nasty stuff in that bullpen. And that's one thing I will give. Like I said, I've given this regime some credit there. They have been able to do the opposite of what they've been known for. They've been able to go and get pitchers and turn around here. The story has always been, oh, this guy left Pittsburgh and look what they did to him. Like, look what Tampa did to this guy and look what New York did to this guy. And I feel like the Pirates are now starting to find their own success stories, and a big one of like Santana this year.
Oscar Marine, that's what he's known for. When he came here, he was known for being a developer. I think that's his greatest gift. I also think in the big leagues, that can possibly be your worst asset.
Why is that?
Because you need to compete.
Okay.
You can't develop. I mean, it's going to bring me to another question for you. Okay. You can't develop young pitchers in the big leagues by putting restraints on them. I've never seen a horse be pulled back when they want to run.
Got you. Okay.
So like everything about development is behind the scenes. Did it work out there? But you're pulling back in real competition. So the actual like win-loss thing dies, but the development grows. Like Santana was very fortunate that it all worked out and it was fast because it was blatant as day what they needed to do. And it's easy to get caught up with seeing all their super sinkers over in New York and seeing your guys hit homer after homer that you want to get guys on the ground. Then he comes to a park bigger and he could blow doors. But he had 4.5 years, 5 years in the big leagues. Like he's always had that talent. He just had a bad usage. Right. And but I do think that's a gift of Oscar's and Message.
Okay.
But especially Oscar. I think Message took a balance of like, being able to talk to the guys about realness, if that makes sense. I think Message or Ray Searage and an Oscar would have been great. Because Ray can pull something out of you in the middle of a game that nobody understood as much as the guy that actually got it. Like you could see Liriano fire coming out in his eyes, and he was chill as all get out when Ray comes out there and smashes him in the chest and makes him believe he can do something he probably can't. He was really good at those moments. Huh?
Communication, leadership.
Yeah, and I don't even know if Ray, I think it was just how much he cared. You could feel it resonating off of him.
Interesting.
So like that's kind of what I'm just saying, because it's just looking at it as like, how do you get David Bednar to get that belief back? How do you get Kyle Nicholas to, understand that he's a crazy human being and he needs to double down? If he throws one at someone's head like Kopech did, which he's got better stuff than Kopech, it's going to change things. But Kopech's got 4 years in the big leagues. He's been running around the ringer. And that's the maturation phase in the big leagues. Sometimes you have to allow to happen, but you have to bet on these guys. Like the guy that I think we're going to see continue to move forward is Majinski. And he's a great lesson on why you take the best stuff, even if they're a starter, and throw them in the bullpen. Because you can kind of profile. I've been wrong a bunch, but like you can kind of see. Like I think Barco, just a little bit I've seen him, the minor leaguers, his strikeout numbers, he would have been in the big leagues possibly for me this year if it wasn't for Tommy Pham. Like, and I bet they were actually thinking of that. If Solomedo doesn't work out, shoot, that dude's going to be a great bullpen arm because he's different. That's why I'm surprised Baumgartner didn't get signed and somebody tried to throw him in the bullpen, because his velo would tick up. And everybody knows he has a rubber arm. So it's like that balance. And then going to the next thing, I've thought a lot about this, obviously, is how do you do that in the bullpen? Well, you have to go get some old guys. I think their thought on Chapman wasn't a bad thought. I just think that if I'm David Bednar and I see the all-times close leader outside Kimbrel in my lifetime come in, I think I just lost my job. I don't know if I didn't want to ask, and I didn't ask if they told him. But he got hurt in spring training. He wasn't the same, and then he didn't close that first game, and I said, this is going to be a problem. Because David Bednar cares more than anybody else on that team. And that is the downfall of greatness, is guys that care too much. That's how guys get the yips. That's how guys lose their understanding of where their hand is and their mechanics and everything else, because they're trying to do something so unnatural because their head is in the way. It's actually a chemical that gets released. It's crazy.
So do you think that was a lot of it with David Bednar? Because I know he's going to be a hot topic the entire offseason. Do you tender him a contract? Do you not? So, what's up with David? Can you regain it? Because that's the other thing, too. I mean, relievers are prone to just fall off.
You all, thank you for watching. I know we try to provide the most entertaining content that we can, and we'd love to spread it to as many people as possible. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you could take the 5 seconds to like this video and subscribe to the page, it helps out so much more than you know. Thank you, and let's go Bucks.